Hello, my friend, and welcome to the Champions Adjust Sports Talk Show. My name is Aaron Machbitz. Let's talk about how baseball encourages cheating. Well, it's a little bit more detailed and nuanced than that, so let me explain. If you're unfamiliar with sort of the intricacies of baseball, let's dive deep into them. Because baseball, for some reason, people think is a quote unquote boring sport, and it's not. And let me tell you why. Baseball encourages cheating, and there's been a history of cheating in the game of baseball forever. For example, if you have a runner on second base, his job is to try and steal the signs from the catcher and relay them to the hitter. For example, if they are lazy with their signs and they only use one sign, say fastball, changeup, curveball, whatever the case may be, the guy on second base may be seeing that. Usually they do second signs or they do numbers or they do a pattern. Now I'll get to today's game where that doesn't really happen, but I'm just trying to explain my point. And so if they use the same pattern or they get lazy or the guy on second base picks up their pattern, his job is then to relay the pitches to the hitter. If he touches the top of the helmet, maybe that's fastball. If his hand's on his knees, maybe that's breaking ball. And so that's a way of trying to get an advantage because we know hitting is the hardest thing to do in sports. And so if you understand what pitch might be coming, then you have an advantage there. That's an example of the game of baseball where inside the game, in the game, just using your eyes, your ears, and your feel for the game, you're trying to get a little advantage. Some would call it cheating. It's not. It's a game of inches, right? Baseball is a thinking man's game. So if I can take any advantage, I'm going to, right? It's also a lot of the guys on the bench, the coaches, and the guys playing to pick up any tendencies from the pitcher. Maybe he grabs the ball in a very slightly different angle for a curveball, for a changeup, for a slider, for a fastball, and then he has a tendency to do that on every pitch. So if you pick that up, then you also can know what pitch might be coming, and then you can hit the ball, right? If you know a fastball on the outside is coming, really you don't know location. Location's very hard, but if you know a fastball is coming, it's much easier to hit a 98-mile-per-hour fastball if you know it's coming rather than trying to guess if it's a 87-mile-an-hour slider or 98-mile-per-hour fastball. So you're always trying to pick up those little tendencies from the pitcher as well. Does he shrug his shoulders every time he does a fastball? Does he grip the ball weird? Does he spend a little extra second in his glove trying to fidget with his hand every single time he grabs for the slider? There has to be tendencies over and over and over and over again. So as a casual fan, you're not really watching this. But during the game, inside the game, everyone is watching this happen. Baseball teams and baseball players are trying to pick up those little tendencies. Some might call it cheating. We just try taking advantage of the situation. We being baseball players, baseball teams, try and use that stuff to our advantage because the game is so hard. And usually, for the most part, games are so close. You're 1-0, 2-1, 0-0, going into the last inning, especially with today's day and age and the pitchers being so good. But now we have sort of this automatic pitch thing where you just the pitcher gets on the mound, he shakes his head and he goes. I think that's not very good for the game. I think robot umpires would be absolutely atrocious for the game. I mean, imagine how boring a baseball game would be if you think it's boring now where you never saw anyone get ejected ever from a game. Imagine if you never saw the guy, the head coach, the manager come out of the dugout screaming and yelling, grabbing first base, throwing it, putting dirt on home plate, yelling at the umpire. Imagine if that never happened because every strike and ball call was perfectly done by a robot. So the game, baseball, is built on some of these inside tactics, and then it's sort of been expanded out to actual cheating, right? We saw the Astros, they actually cheated. They used things outside of the game to help them in the game. If you can find any minute detail, any minute advantage, the teams are doing something over and over again. They're getting lazy on their signs. They do this, they do that. That's inside the game, using your own eyes and ears and feel for the game to take advantage of that. That's not cheating. When you start using outside dynamics, outside tools that aren't in the game, yes, that's considered cheating. And then you go into the steroid era of baseball where everyone was taking steroids. I mean, you have the famous 1998 season, which saved baseball of Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. And you look at the home run and Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, you look at the home run derbies during that time, and that was peak. I mean, come on, that was peak Major League Baseball. I mean, Pete Rose was kicked out of the game for so long for gambling on his own team, even though he's one of the greatest baseball players to ever live. Shout out to Pete Rose. What an absolute legend. We love you, Pete Rose. But then this game of baseball has this asterisk by it because of steroids. Everyone was doing steroids back then, and you can't eliminate that part of history because of steroids. That saved the game of Major League Baseball. You want to make Major League Baseball exciting again? Well, steroids, home runs. I'm not actually serious. You shouldn't give everyone steroids so they can hit home runs. My point being is that when we think about the history of Major League Baseball, we think about some of those cheating type tactics. We also think about sort of Babe Ruth's era where they were just hacking darts and drinking all day and very unhealthy about their ability to be professional athletes, but still going out there and getting the job done. There are different eras and different things that make Major League Baseball great. But really the thing that makes baseball great is that thinking man's aspect, those little minute details you're trying to pick apart each pitch, each play, each time a pitcher comes out. What are his tendencies? Where does he like to throw the ball? That's why there's shifts, right? And that's why hitters have shifts and they move over. The shifts are a little bit different now than they used to be, but you still shift because the hitter has tendencies. Where am I going to throw him? Where does he think I'm going to throw him? I threw him here last time. Maybe I'll double down on that. Maybe I'll go back-to-back sliders. Maybe I'll go 2 fastballs here. It's a thinking man's game. And yeah, the casual fan can't see that happening, but there's so many moving pieces happening here. All right, we have the 6, 7, 8 hitter coming up. They're 2 left-handers. Okay, we'll bring the right-hander for the last 2 guys because he has to throw a full inning. And then when he leaves that inning, then we'll bring in the lefty. The lefty will face these 3, and then we'll have this guy come in, and then we can close the door, and then we need 6 outs for the win. I mean, all of that's happening. Defensive replacements, defensive movements, pinch hitters, all of this stuff makes the game of baseball so exciting. And so if you can learn a little bit about it, when you go watch a game, you're sitting on your couch watching a game, you can see some of these tendencies happening. And it's not players trying to cheat. They're just trying to get that slight advantage because, again, hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do in professional sports. And so if I can get that little advantage, I'm going to take it. Now, obviously, that sort of undertone of cheating in baseball got taken too far with the steroids. But again, Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire saved Major League Baseball with their home run chase. Ken Griffey Jr. saved Major League Baseball. The only reason Barry Bonds started taking steroids in the first place because he was jealous. He had an amazing MVP type year in 1998, but no one was talking about him. So then in 2001, he breaks the record, and now Barry Bonds is considered, in my opinion, the greatest baseball player of all time. And so we can't eliminate these guys from history. All of them should be in the Hall of Fame because it's the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Ethics. The Hall of Ethics would be about your character. Great. If you want to have a separate Hall of Fame called the Hall of Ethics for everyone's character, who are the best guys, who did the greatest things off the field, who are humanitarians, I'd love that. I think that's a fantastic idea. Put all those guys in the Hall of Ethics because those are what young people and young players can aspire to be like. But the Hall of Fame is simply about how good you were as a baseball player. And if everyone was taking steroids in that era, then those guys shouldn't have asterisks next to their names. Or maybe they do have an asterisk next to their name, but they still should be put in the Hall of Fame because that is the history of baseball. And we have to accept that part of the steroid era is part of the history of baseball. And that little undertone of cheating is part of the history of baseball. Alex Rodriguez, one of the greatest players to ever live. Roger Clemens, probably the greatest player or pitcher of all time. Barry Bonds, probably the greatest player ever to exist in the world, maybe, unless Shohei Ohtani continues doing what he's doing. These people absolutely 100% deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, and it makes the Hall of Fame less prestigious because these people aren't in there. And so, yes, I get it. You don't want to change it, but you absolutely should. Again, it's not the Hall of Ethics. You're not grading people on their character. You're grading people on their ability to play the game of baseball. And Roger Clemens, Alex Rodriguez, and Barry Bonds are 3 of the best to ever do it, if not the best to ever do it at their respective positions. And they should be absolutely put into the Hall of Fame. Now, I started talking about, how baseball encourages cheating. It's an undertone of cheating. Then I explained what that means. Of course, that led me to the Hall of Fame and steroids because that has, the cheating sort of asterisk next to it. But I think that is important to understand as a casual sports fan and maybe now as a deeper understanding of this so you can be more of a baseball fan because I love baseball. Baseball absolutely changed my life. I still coach baseball to this day and obviously talk about it on this sports show. And I just want to share that baseball love with as many people as humanly possible. And I think if you understand some of those undertones, some of those tactics, some of those advantageous moves that teams are trying to make, it makes watching the game more exciting. And I think that's really cool. And then we should accept the fact that the steroid era happened. It saved the game of baseball. And we need to put those guys in the Hall of Fame, celebrate their careers, and just understand it is what it is. It's part of the history of baseball. And we can accept that and love that. Now we have guys like, Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani carrying the mantle into the next generation for all of these guys. And it's beautiful. And baseball is beautiful. And how can you not be romantic about baseball? That's all I have to say there. So please comment down below what you think, your thoughts, your opinions. Then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Lots of love. Cheers.